how the ABCs of behavior helps is that we look at the antecedents, or what we call triggers, to the behaviors occurring, and that helps us prevent challenging behaviors or come up with strategies to be preventative. And then the consequence part of what happens after the behaviors kind of lets us know, okay, what's the function, or what are some things that might be maintaining this behavior occurring.
Welcome to the Company of Dads podcast. After 120 plus episodes, we're doing something different this season. I'm still your host, Paul Sullivan, and we're still focused on lead dads, working moms, and how small changes at home or work can have a big impact on their lives. What's new is each episode now promises to deliver actionable advice on some area of concern at home or at work. Short, direct, again, actionable. 5 questions, 5 answers. This week, our guest is Alisha Simpson-Watt, a licensed social worker and the founder of Collaborative ABA Services. We're going to talk parenting tips today. Alisha runs an accredited behavioral health practice that specializes in applied behavior analysis. More on that later. And offers a variety of services to children and families, such as diagnostic evaluations, speech language therapy, occupational therapy, and parent-guardian training. Welcome, Alisha, to the Company of Dads podcast.
Hello.
First question, what's applied behavior analysis therapy, and how does it help parents and children?
Sure. So applied behavior analysis therapy is actually a scientific and evidence-based approach to looking at behaviors. And using applied behavior analysis, there's different modules or different approaches to teaching new skills, as well as reducing behavior challenges.
So give me some examples there. When you say teaching new skills, what are the skills that are being taught to either the children or the parents to make a more harmonious family?
Sure. So like some skills might be, you can teach a child to request help, or you can teach a child who may be nonverbal, working with them on increasing their communication. And that communication could be being able to identify items or things that they may want to help express or communicate their wants and needs, or even teaching a child something like tying their shoe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. At what point do parents, generally come to you?
So parents generally come to us when they may have a child that may have, for example, autism, has been very associated with applied behavior analysis therapy, because a lot of research has been based on that population of individuals. However, applied behavior analysis therapy does benefit other populations as well. And a lot of times we might get calls from a parent who may have a child who they think, hey, my child is a little bit delayed, and I want to actually evaluate or see if my child may have autism, because we also do autism evaluations as well. So we might get a call to do an autism evaluation, or we might even get a call from a parent saying, hey, my child, is not communicating like I would like them to. They're pointing, they're grabbing. They do have a diagnosis of autism, but I'm also noticing that they're having meltdowns at school because they don't like loud noises. What can I do to help support them? Can I get them into therapy? And that might be, a referral for applied behavior analysis therapy, or we might have a kid that has sensory needs. So that might even be like a referral for our occupational therapy as well.
That's great. That dovetails right into the second question, and that is, how do you go about helping specifically the children who you work with, and how do you help their parents? Because you have this expertise in ABA therapy, but for most parents, if they have a child who's autistic or on the autism spectrum, it may be their first time with this, so they don't have that wealth of knowledge that you do. So how do you in concrete ways help the parents and children kind of smooth out their relationship?
So we do have an intake process, but the first part in connecting with us is they actually call us, and we get a lot of calls from parents themselves, as well as maybe other doctors' offices or schools. And our main thing is to find out what the presenting concerns are. And if it's something that we can help we will definitely say, hey, we can help out. We can put you on our list where we can, coordinate and do an intake if we have availability. Or if we're not able to help that family, we will refer them out to other providers. But we also will educate them on, because we do get questions about applied behavior analysis therapy. What is it? What does it entail? So we do like to give them that information up front, as well as the other services that we provide and how they can help them with their situation. But once we get the family in to start services, we do an intake, which does include us going out and meeting with the family, doing observations with the child, working with the family to figure out what are the treatment goals, what is it that you are looking for that we can help support you on. And again, if it's something that is outside of our scope, we will collaborate with that family to connect them to the other resources in the community, such as, for example, we might have a family that may need, that is interested in music therapy or something like that, that we might not offer. So we will collaborate with music therapy or, another provider as well that we might not be able to provide, or even med management.
Yeah, and what would it look like? You're that family. You're listening to this podcast now, and you're thinking, okay, I understand this is an intake process. I understand they're going to help us. They're going to collaborate with us. But what would it look like for that? The mom and dad, the child, children. What is it going to look like to them when they actually come to your center and they begin working? What are some of the specific things that you might do to help the children and that family?
Sure. So we do provide services in home as well as clinic based. We have a preschool age program, so that might look a little bit different than in home. So in the clinic setting, in the preschool age program, that child would get occupational therapy services, speech services, as well as social skills, and working directly with a board certified behavior analysis and behavior technician. And what we would do is we would work on their language, working on their ability to interact with peers. It may be working on reducing behavior difficulties, helping with potty training. Each child's needs are very unique, and it depends on what the presenting concerns are. But we also do an assessment at the beginning to also look at the child's strengths and limitations. And that assessment, in addition to feedback from the parents, helps guide our treatment planning and what the goals are going to be. And in an in-home setting, it's similar in regards to, they might not be in a group setting with other peers or other kids, but it's more of that like level of one-to-one, where we're working directly in their natural environment with the family, with the child, and we're still working on building those skills of language, communication, those social skills. But we may be able to work on some social skills with the sibling that's in the household or another family member. We can also work on, if there's some sensory issues, we can collaborate with other providers. So like what we have in home, we may not have a speech and OT that goes in home, but they may come to the clinic and get those services here at the clinic. And the behavior technician and BCBA that works with that family may meet them at the clinics, because we are very big on collaborating with other disciplines.
Yeah, you said something there that I want to go a little deeper in, because it's so important, and that's the siblings. If
Mm-hmm.
a child has a neurotypical sibling, perhaps that sibling doesn't quite understand what's going on, or can understand it on some level, but can't understand the different behaviors throughout the course of a day or a week. What do you do specifically to help those siblings, particularly when they're young, particularly when they're 6, 7, 8, 9 years old? How do you help them understand what's going on in their family, and how to best be a contributing member of that family?
Sure. So we do have a lot of those instances where we do have siblings that are part of the family, and they want to be part of the sessions because they're seeing, hey, my brother or my sister is getting these services. They got this cool person coming to the house and playing games with them, and they seem to be having fun. What about me? And so a lot of times what we may do is use them as a peer model and incorporate them, for example, in those social skills. We may do some activity where we're working on turn taking, and we incorporate that sibling into a turn taking activity. The other piece is, there are stories out there that the parents can also share with them separately in regards to autism, if the child has autism, and also how they can actually be kind to their sibling, or their sibling might be different but they're still the same person. So there are like children's stories out there specifically for family members and helping them understand the spectrum as well.
Yeah. Question 3. You talk about the ABCs to understand behavior. What are these ABCs and how do they work?
Sure. So, looking at ABCs, it helps us identify what happened before behavior, which, in other words, the A stands for antecedent. B stands for the behavior that we're interested in regards to the behavior that we're looking to observe. And C stands for consequence. So, that is something that happens immediately after the behavior. And how the ABCs of behavior helps is that we look at the antecedents, or what we call triggers, to the behaviors occurring, and that helps us prevent challenging behaviors or come up with strategies to be preventative. And then the consequence part of what happens after the behaviors kind of lets us know, okay, what's the function, or what are some things that might be maintaining this behavior occurring.
And of course, the idea being is that if you can figure out what that antecedent is, what that trigger is, you can minimize it, you can prevent it, you can stop it so that you don't have the B and C happening. Is that correct?
Yes, and it helps us when we're developing behavior plans, and also doing when we do a lot of parent training or even trainings in the community working with other professionals. ABC data collection is huge because it helps us look at the environment and kind of see what are some variables in the environment that are impacting this child's behavior. And I'll give you like an example. Example might be a child going into the grocery store, and every time dad brings this child to the grocery store, this child has a meltdown every time they go down the candy aisle because this child wants their favorite lollipop. And as a result, what dad does, because he doesn't want to hear the screaming and crying, he gives the child a lollipop.
Mm.
So when you're looking at the ABC data, the A is they went down the candy aisle. The
Yeah.
B is the child starts screaming and crying for a lollipop. The C is that he gets the lollipop from dad. So when you're looking at the ABC information, how we prevent or how we look at strategies to help this scenario is, okay, so what may need to happen is when we go to the store, maybe we need to talk about our expectations in advance of what is expected of that child. And the other strategy might be that we might just not go down that candy aisle in that store.
Sure.
And the consequence or the strategy to help, if in regards to the behavior, is dad not giving in to the child when they cry for the candy bar or the lollipop, that they don't give them the candy. Because what
Right.
happens is the child learns that,
Sure.
hey, if I'm crying when I go to the store and I go down the candy aisle, I'm going to get a lollipop. So guess what's going to happen in the future? I'm more likely to cry when I go down that aisle because I know dad's going to give me a lollipop for me to be quiet.
Yeah, and you can see both sides of that. Obviously, that child it's learned behavior and it's being reinforced. And
Yes.
so I throw a fit, I get a lollipop. But if you're the dad, you're thinking, okay, I'm just trying to get my grocery shopping done. There are dozens of
Mm-hmm.
other people here. How do I move this along? But that's really good because I think often if you can break it down and intellectualize it, people can see, okay, I understand that what I'm doing, which I think is a good thing, giving the lollipop, is actually reinforcing this behavior that I don't want to reinforce. So
Yeah.
excellent point. But that kind of leads into question 4. As parents, if we're dysregulated ourselves, if we are super stressed out, either from the behavior of a child or just life in general, of our job, of something that's going on, how do we then help our children who might be sensing, that we're a bit off ourselves?
Yes. Being a parent can be challenging. I mean, we have a
That's the
lot
understatement.
going
That's the
on.
understatement of the day, Alicia. Come on, that's the understatement of the day.
Yes. And I honestly, as a parent myself, I totally get it. You have to manage the children, you have to manage your job, you have to manage other things that might come your way throughout the day. And I think the most important thing being a parent is you got to be kind to yourself and
Mm.
give yourself grace. And in doing that comes self-care. And you have to take care of yourself, because if you can take care of yourself, you can be there better for your child. And this might look like ensuring that you get adequate rest, eating healthy, or even taking some time for yourself throughout the day, even if it's like 5 minutes where you can, take some time to listen to some music, maybe just sit in silence for 5 minutes, go for a ride, just doing something that you enjoy doing just to kind of get yourself grounded, as well as helping you with managing stress. And it also, when we do some self-care and we manage our own stress, it helps us also manage our own emotions, which helps us in turn respond better to challenging behaviors and have more patience with our kids.
That's great. That's good. That's good advice for anybody, any parent. Question 5. You touched on this in parts of the podcast so far, but I really want to nail it at the end. What are the best ways to reinforce the behavior we'd like to see in our children as parents? And then the flip side of that, what are the best ways to prevent the behaviors that we don't want to see?
Mm-hmm. So I think when we're looking at reinforcement, right? Or reinforcers, those are things that increase the likelihood that a behavior will occur in the future. And one thing to think about is every child is different. So what might be reinforcing for one child may not be for another child. So we have to look at what is it that the child enjoys. Does the child like praise or attention from the parent? Does the child prefer a sticker chart? Does the child prefer getting extra screen time? So the most important thing is kind of knowing your child and kind of seeing what are the things that are going to motivate them. Because if you don't have a motivator, then whatever reinforcer that you're going to try to provide to increase that behavior is not going to be effective if it's not effective for the child. So I think that the most important thing is kind of figuring out what motivates your child. And when we're looking at reinforcing behaviors, you want to try to be very clear and concise in regards to what it is that, like the boundaries as far as the expectations that are age appropriate for that child. But also when a child does something great, you want to provide what we call behavior specific praise. So being very specific on what they're doing, that is what you're looking to increase or to give them praise. So for example, if a child is sitting down and eating their dinner, you can say, oh, you're doing a great job sitting and eating. Great job. Very specific to reinforce the behavior that you're expecting. And on the downside or in contrast, when you're looking at behaviors that you do not want to increase, like those are more of like what we call maladaptive behaviors or challenging behaviors. As parents, we just have to be mindful that we're also not reinforcing the negative behaviors. So that means in regards to if a child is misbehaving, and say what misbehaving might be is they're running around the kitchen and you want them to have a seat. So reinforcing that behavior for a child that may seek praise or attention, it could even be in the form of reprimands because it's still some type of parent attention. Right. So it could be,
right. Even though it's negative parent attention, it's still attention.
Right. It could be sit down, have a seat. And even though, for you, you're thinking that, hey, I'm just telling them to sit down, for that child that might be wanting that parent attention, you're kind of reinforcing that behavior, as opposed to how I would respond in that situation would be maybe pointing to the chair, not saying anything. So it's like you're acknowledging the behavior, but you're not reinforcing the child's wanting attention, if that makes sense.
It does. And, you talked about it earlier in this about, parents giving themselves grace. I'm listening to all of this. This is not easy stuff to do. You can imagine, I mean, you as parents, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to fall short. But when a parent, how long does it typically take for, parents and children to get better aligned so that they're, the children aren't having these outbursts. They don't want to have those outbursts. They're more regulated, and the parents feel like things are, more or less going smoothly. About how long does that take generally?
So I can't really give you a quantity because each child in each family is different. Some kids learn faster than others, and right. Some kids learn slower than others. But the most important piece is with parenting is consistency. So if you determine that, hey, I'm noticing that Johnny does not like going to certain stores because he might have a meltdown. I'm just giving an example. Yeah. And you're saying, hey, we're just not going to go to certain stores, then that message needs to be consistent across all caretakers. So that way everyone is on the same page. Or if we're going to give praise to Johnny for every time that he's sitting in his chair and he's not running around the house, then it needs to be consistent across caregivers as well, that everyone's doing the same thing. Or if we all agree that, hey, we're not going to yell at Johnny anymore, we're just going to point to the chair instead of yelling at him to stop running, then everyone needs to respond to the behavior and be on the same page. So that's like a huge thing with children, is consistency. And that also helps in regards to managing behaviors. And like I said before, each child and family is different as far as like time wise. It can take someone, as short as like a couple of days to learn a skill, and someone as long as weeks or months. Each person is different.
Alisha Simpson-Watt, licensed social worker and the founder of Collaborative ABA Services. Thank you so much for being my guest today on the Company of Dads podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And one last thing, give us your website. How can listeners find you and find out more about your services?
Sure. So we have a website. You can check out our website at www.collaborativaabaservices.com. You can also check us out on Instagram at Collaborative ABA Services, as well as LinkedIn and Facebook.
Thank you again, Alisha. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Company of Dads podcast. I also want to thank the people who make this podcast and everything else that we do at the Company of Dads possible. Helder Mira, who is our audio producer. Lindsay Decker, who handles all of our social media. Terry Brennan, who's helping us with the newsletter and audience acquisition. Emily Servin, who is our web maestro. And of course, Evan Roosevelt, who is working side by side with me in many of the things that we do here at the Company of Dads. It's a great team, and we're just trying to bring you the best in fatherhood. Remember, the one-stop shop for everything is our newsletter, The Dad. Sign up at thecompanyofdads.com/thedad. Thank you again for listening.